All your ways are good, all your ways are sure. I will trust in you alone, higher than my sight, high above my life.
A vision trip that Lone Oak First Baptist Church sent a couple of guys to Africa, to Zambia, to look at what our church could do, how we could get involved in missions there. And they had a report, and they showed pictures and just told about what all they did. And as they were speaking, I was feeling a call from God that I should go on the next mission trip to Zambia. And it was a little bit overwhelming because I'm just a country girl that I'm not really qualified to be a missionary, but I just felt the call.
At that same time, I was sitting there minding my own business, and all of a sudden I started seeing the images on the screen before us, and God just got a hold of my heart and said, I want you to go on this next trip.
Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. Who you love, I'll love. How you serve, I'll serve. If this life I lose, I will follow you. Yeah, I will follow you. Yeah.
It was a time where we realized several different times that the God that we worship in the United States is the same God that they worship in Africa, and that God didn't just die for Americans, He died for the world. And He opened our eyes to be thinking globally as it comes to reaching His people, and not just doing what we can in our circle of influence, but He called us to go to the uttermost parts of the earth, and really opened my eyes to that.
So we, when we were leaving that first time on the airplane, Paul looked at me, and both of us had tears in our eyes, and he said, "We'll be back." And he just patted me on the leg, and he said, "We're coming back." And I was like, only by God's will, because the money was a lot of money, and I just couldn't imagine Him blessing me again. I mean, the first time was just a lifetime, blessing, and I thought, God, are you going to do it again? Well, He did. He did it the next year, and then the next year, and then the next year. So we've gone to Zambia 4 times, and every trip has been different in its own, but every trip it's been obvious that that the gospel is needed there, and it's spreading, and that God's working there.
I will follow you, yeah. In you.
And so I spent a time in prayer and seeking the Lord, and it was actually a wonderful time hearing from Him, and how He affirmed time and time again in our hearts, this is what I want you to do. And every sermon, every Bible study, every song, it was all just pointing to, yes, Paul, this is it. And so I kept praying that Velda would feel the same call. And after several weeks, one afternoon we were talking, and she asked me what's been bothering me, and I said, well, I wasn't going to tell you. I've been praying for you. I feel like we've been called to full-time ministry as missionaries. And I've been praying that God would call you, and that you would feel the same things. I believe we'd be called as a family. And she looked at me and said, well, I was called 3 years ago, and I've been praying for you ever since. So God just really affirmed in our hearts that this was it, and that I'm a little slow.
Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you.
To be put in a situation where you're more reliant on God is scary for a lot of people. And I've heard people say, well, I'm afraid to give it all to God because He might call me to be a missionary in Africa or something. Well, let me put your heart at rest. It's not that bad. Anytime God calls you to do anything, the blessing is far outweighs any type of sacrifice or burden, and actually there is no burden, but it's small in the eyes of a great God.